Hey everyone, in the past month I've been checking out Ulduar and Titan Rune Dungeons, also known as Heroic Plus, on the PTR. Both are coming out on live servers soon with Phase 2 of Wrath Classic, and I just wanted to go over them briefly and give my impressions after testing them. Recently I spent an absurd amount of time running Ulduar daily on the PTR, and the raid had a lot more green than I remembered. 10-man groups were a lot easier to make, so that's mostly what I did. But I did get to run with a few 25-man raids as well. My guild has very little interest in PTR, so I was mainly joining other people's 25-mans or making my own 10-man pugs. I actually got to play with a ton of people from my Twitch chat, which was awesome. Thank you for the great runs, guys. On 10-man, I got down every hard mode except Flame Leviathan, Vzax, and Algalon, though we were quite close to getting an Algalon kill. On 25-man, I got to check out pretty much everything on normal mode and killed Freya hard mode and almost killed Thorum hard mode. The difficulty level between 10-man and 25-man is vast, as you might expect. For example, XT hard mode on 10-man is so easy that there's a good chance you'll never wipe to it, but on 25-man, it's actually impossible to kill in Phase 1 gear. Pretty much every hard mode we tried on 10-man took us 1 to 5 pulls. Yogg Zero took us around 12 pulls, and Algalon we pulled probably 25 to 30 times, but we didn't even get a kill on that one. It's really nice to see some higher difficulty bosses, even in 10-man, that feel rewarding when you get them down the first time. One cool thing about Ulduar is many of the bosses have 2 to 5 different difficulty levels, so there's something for everyone in this raid. Probably my favorite thing about Ulduar as a tank is there's lots of stuff for us to do on most fights. Even the fights where we're just standing still, we generally need to carefully manage our cooldowns to survive. The fights feel really engaging, and cooldown usage feels impactful. Ulduar bosses hit much harder than Phase 1 bosses, so tanks will definitely want to ditch the aggressive gearing for much tankier gearing. If you're an off tank, you'll be glad to know that there are more 2-tank fights in Ulduar than in Phase 1 raids. One thing I am a bit worried about is how crazy the item level increase in Ulduar will be. In case you don't already know, Blizzard has buffed the item levels in Ulduar by 6 for normal drops and 13 for hard mode drops. This means the best gear dropping in Ulduar is eye level 252 on 25-man, and eye level 245 weapons and 239 non-weapons in 10-man. Previously, eye level 239 gear was the best gear you could get from 25-man, so this is a massive change. The raid is really fun in Phase 1 gear and probably would remain pretty fun even as your raid starts picking up new pieces with the old item levels. However, with the item level buffs, I think player power is going to get out of control and turn this amazing raid into round 2 of Phase 1 raids pretty quickly. The reason they made the item level change was to make Ulduar loot more appealing and keep people running Ulduar even when Trial of the Grand Crusader, the main Phase 3 raid, releases. That being the goal, I think it would be a lot better if they postponed the item level increase until closer to Phase 3, since it isn't needed for many months. With how crazy the item levels are in Ulduar now, the raid is going to get exponentially easier every week. By week 5, I think people will already be so geared that it will start to feel like Nax again. This raid is an absolute masterpiece, so I'd really hate to see it diminished by the item level change. Overall, I absolutely love Ulduar. This is by far the best raid we've seen in all of Classic. I think everyone is going to have a blast in here, and the many difficulty settings will allow everyone to experience it in some way. Now let's move on to Titan Rune Dungeons, aka Heroic Plus. This is a new difficulty setting for Wrath dungeons that will reward better loot than Heroics. In addition to getting the standard Heroic loot, each boss will drop an epic eye level 200 piece that used to drop in Phase 1 10-mans. The final boss of a Heroic Plus will drop an eye level 213 Phase 1 10-man piece and an eye level 200 tier token. Yes, that means looking for more Heroic Plus SNR hard res is coming to an LFG near you soon. You'll also get Emblems of Valor from every boss you kill. Whichever end boss is part of the Heroic daily quest for the day will also drop a bag with Emblems of Conquest, which is the new currency for the best emblem gear you can get, but only one person can get the bag. As a side note, Phase 1 10-mans now drop the same loot as Phase 1 25-mans, just fewer pieces per boss. So what makes Heroic Plus harder? All mobs have a plus 30% damage and plus 100% health buff in all dungeons but Halls of Stone and Lightning, and a plus 5% damage and plus 190% health buff in those two. I know a lot of people don't like HP buffs because it makes things take longer, but the extra HP actually lets you see mechanics fully play out, whereas before you could kinda just steamroll over these mechanics and ignore them. Mobs also get a special effect which varies by dungeon. Quick note, when I did this on PTR, it was a few weeks ago, so some things may have changed since then. Also, I was in partial bugs and mostly blue gear. These dungeons will of course be much easier with better gear or more organized groups. To activate Heroic Plus, just interact with the mysterious device at the beginning of a dungeon and click Activate Defense Protocol Alpha. A yellow orb will then spawn that everyone in your group needs to click to activate Heroic Plus. In Nexus, Oculus, and Violet Hold, the special effect is that all mobs have a chance on hit to summon two mirror images that spam arcane missiles. They die in one hit from a single target attack, but won't die to AoE. This is definitely the most impactful special effect I encountered because you can easily wipe if the mirror images aren't handled well. It really limits how many mobs you can safely pull too. In Gundrak and Draktheron Keep, the special effect is a ground effect that gives a lifesteal buff to mobs inside of it, healing them when they deal damage. This will be pretty much impossible to see if you have people in your group using other ground effects, particularly Death and Decay. So pay close attention to the mob's buffs rather than the ground effect itself. I do think they should change it to make it more noticeable though. Also, Sladran, the snake boss in Gundrak, is really overtuned. We wiped a bunch of times on him while only having the occasional wipe here and there throughout all of the other heroic pluses. With the increased HP and lifesteal, less geared groups are going to have to deal with way more snakes than you're used to seeing on this fight. The constrictors put a stacking debuff on people they hit, which will web wrap them at 5 stacks. This becomes pretty problematic when multiple people in your group are getting web wrapped and a poison nova is going off and even more snakes are spawning. The number of snakes spawned should probably be reduced to bring the difficulty more in line with other Heroic Plus bosses. In Utgard Keep and Pinnacle, the special effect is a chance on hit for the mobs to place a debuff on a random nearby player. The debuff has 5 stacks and causes players to drop an icy patch on the ground when they move. Each time a patch is dropped, a stack is removed. It can also be cleansed, but only one stack at a time. The icy patch will reduce movement speed and do a small amount of frost damage over time. This one didn't feel super impactful, but added a little more damage to the party. The damage on this should probably be increased a little bit because it seemed like more of a minor annoyance than a dungeon defining mechanic. In Culling of Stratholm, the special effect gives mobs a chance on hit to infect a player, which will turn them into a zombie after 1 minute. This is a disease that can be cleansed, or you can pick up an item in the dungeon to remove diseases if you happen to not have a disease cleanser. I love this special effect thematically, but it is severely undertuned and ends up having almost no impact on players. I think the duration should be changed to 10 or 15 seconds, so there's some sense of urgency to remove the disease. At 60 seconds, you can kind of just wait and remove it whenever is convenient for you. We actually ended up 3-manning this dungeon by the end because people randomly left and there were about 8 total people online on the PTR at the time. In Ajolnerub and Old Kingdom, the special effect is a chance on hit to web wrap a player. This effect was bugged at the time we tried these dungeons, and it was only applying web wrap to our hunter or his pet. I imagine this will be a really impactful effect once it is working correctly and can hit the tank or the healer. And finally, in Halls of Stone and Lightning, the special effect causes mobs to pulse a stacking debuff on nearby players that increases their damage done by 2% and damage taken by 1% per stack for 12 seconds. This is the reason why Halls of Stone and Lightning have different base damage and HP buffs compared to other dungeons. I really love this mechanic because it gives the player power to choose how crazy they want to go with this effect. If you stack the debuff high, you can do tons of damage, but you'll also take tons of damage. You can drop the debuff anytime by getting out of melee range or just not chain pulling packs. The Bran event in Halls of Stone is also no longer a snooze fest in Heroic Plus. Halls of Stone and Lightning were by far my favorite Heroic Pluses to do because of how fun the special effect was. Overall, I really like the Heroic Plus system, but I hope Blizzard does change the few things I mentioned. It's a fun new way to gear up alts, and the combination of Heroic Plus and Phase 1 10-man loot changes gives players a lot of control over how quickly they gear up a new character. I'd say the overall difficulty level of Heroic Plus is a bit lower than Heroics in Phase 1 of TBC, which I think is fine given the target audience this content is designed for. These dungeons feel rewarding to do, especially the end bosses when you get an awesome eye level 213 piece. I think Blizzard kinda nailed it with this new system, and I'm definitely looking forward to gearing my alts through Heroic Plus. The Phase 2 PTR as a whole has been great, and it feels like the best days of Wrath Classic are ahead of us. It will be really nice to have some new ways to gear, as well as a much more interesting raid. I hope you all enjoy Phase 2 as much as I have on the PTR so far. If you like what I do and want to support me, the easiest way to do that is liking, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.